Hey folks, it's that time again where we go one by one and go through all my enclosures. I've got 2 terrariums and a bunch of aquariums. We're going to go through all of those and kind of take a quick look and see how they're doing right now. Hey, and before we get too far along, don't forget to click like if you decide you like this video, and leave a comment. Let me know what your favorite enclosure is. I do these videos about every 6 months or so. I don't think it's been quite 6 months since my last one, but I did want to do one last thing at the end of the year to just kind of wrap up all my projects for 2022. Before I get started with my tanks, 2 tanks that I set up at work that I did earlier this year, I wanted to let you know they're both looking really, really good. Both the tiny little 3-gallon tank and the 8-gallon tank with the zombie face in it that we set up at Halloween are both doing great, and it's been a lot of fun. It's kind of like having grandchildren, you know. They're things that you help make, but you're not responsible for them. Brian and John have really enjoyed their tanks, and I enjoy seeing them there at the office. All right, so we're going to start on my upstairs tanks. I have 2 levels to my house, and the tanks upstairs, we'll just start from the smallest and go up to the biggest one. Let's get started. I guess that takes us straight into the tiny island tank. And this is one that we've talked about pretty recently. The light on here is really cool. I'm glad actually that I ended up using this old aquarium as the top for that, because it really made it easy to mount that light up in there. And the little ones on the other side seem to be doing their job and growing plants too. It's kind of funny. I've thought of a number of ways where I could probably keep it from getting quite so covered like that. Like I can install a little fan or do something else like that. But it's actually been kind of neat. And the plant growth in there has been really good. This is an Anubias. Now, when I started this, it had Buse. And I still do have quite a few Buse plants sort of packed in around the margins and stuff. But what I'm going to try to get them to do, the ones that were real successful in my other tank, kind of grew out of the water and sort of self-acclimated. So I've got one that's doing really well, and the Anubias kind of just almost instantly took to it and is looking great in there. So I've got that to kind of get things started. I added some jade shrimp to this. I only see one here now that I have a camera on it, but hopefully there's more, and I'm going to do a big order and kind of put a big population probably of green shrimp in here is what I would like to try. And I'm thinking about maybe a Mexican crayfish or something that can climb all over. So next door we have the Steampunk Tank, and it is way overgrown. I really need to get in there and trim that up. Of course, in here I have my danger noodles, otherwise known as black coolie loaches. I still have 4 of them in here. I've had a couple of other fish and shrimp in here also, kind of in a transitory way. They kind of came in and left, but the coolie loaches have been in there and have actually done really super well. I love putting little things in there for them to hide in, like that little statue and a couple of other little ornaments and stuff. And they come out when I throw some food in there and kind of do their little dance and eat their food, and they're really, really fascinating to see. It's still a great tank after all these years. It's actually been up quite a while now. So moving on, we've got the 10-gallon. This was a Scaping with Scraps challenge. This is from 2020, and this is a tank that started off with a really pretty cool waterfall that broke almost instantly. It seemed like within a month or two that broke, and I ripped it all out of there, and I was gonna ditch the whole tank. But then I decided to cap it with sand, and I thought that was really kind of interesting. And I got these gobies that really love sand. I've got some that kind of burrow in there, and others that kind of skim around the surface. And I got my little banded coolie loach in here. I bought so many of those. That's the only one that's lived. This tank is running with a little Awase filter, and it is doing fantastic. It's actually done so well, I've kept it up just because it's so low maintenance and just kind of a Crypt tank. So over here, we've got the tank that we just did. This is my newest one. I just wanted to show you how crystal clear it is in there. And boy, what a difference from when I filmed it. I did all the least optimal way of filling this and everything. It really made a mess filling this up. And then it was a big mess behind me in the background of another video. But it did eventually come out really, really nice. And I've got some little endlers in there just to kind of get it seasoned up, but it's going good. I'll report back on it soon. Next door, we've got the 20-gallon tank, and this is my another one that I've recently updated. This, I guess, I had the 3-year update for the Anoxic filtration project, and this sort of kickstarted the tank next to it, and another tank we're going to see later on, the 43-gallon. It's a really, really interesting tank, and the fish that are in it, it's a little overpopulated, probably for me. But a few fish have passed away. Like I lost a couple of honey grommies this year. I'm down to just the one. So I'm probably going to do some stuff. Like I'm going to move some of these fish around, especially as I depopulate some other tanks. And I don't know. This might end up becoming a shrimp tank or something else at some point. It's growing buse. It does have CO2. The plant growth in it isn't actually spectacular. I really think I should experiment with maybe some ferts in here. I'd like to do that, but as far as like algae growth and stuff like this has been very unproblematic compared to other tanks, and that's kind of why how I judge its success. Now, to me, buse is really hard to grow. I've got a nice light on it, CO2, and it's just kind of barely creeping along until I get it into a marginal situation like in the Steampunk Tank, and it starts to really grow like crazy. Speaking of growing like crazy, this is my algae farm. This is my no filter, no CO2, no ferts tank. It's just a dirt-capped tank with sand, and it is going through its terrible, terrible ones. I did a big trim in here, and it kind of made things worse. I think I got even more algae than I did before. I pulled all the fish that were in there out, and I got one Siamese algae eater, and he's in there. We're going to see what he does. It's kind of an experiment. So over here we have my oldest tank, especially on YouTube anyway. It's a 57-gallon column tank. I've got this from a PetSmart years and years ago. It is my oldest still going aquascape that I've ever done, and definitely the oldest one on this YouTube channel. It's got a bunch of fish in it. Recently, one of my lights died, one of those long lights. I replaced it with like just something temporary. I haven't trimmed this thing or really done much as far as like trimming the plants at all, because I want to take all these plants and use them in the 210 downstairs. So I haven't really been touching this tank. I've been just kind of keeping it pristine. Downstairs now, we've got the Spec 16-gallon, and this tank here it's had a little bit of problems with algae and stuff. It's not been doing so great, but just recently I had a number of fish die off. Remember, I'd added a bunch of celestial danios. I probably should have quarantined them because a bunch of them died. I still have one left, and the original one that was in there before and he have gotten to be great friends, and it's been several weeks since I've had any issues. So hopefully whatever was going on in there is done. I added some general cure and stuff, but really you should just quarantine your fish when you bring them in. It'd help a lot. But it kind of caused this hair algae bloom when those fish started dying and stuff. I got quite a lot of hair algae going in here, but it's been easy enough to kind of clean that out. The other inhabitants in here are some blue-eyed rainbows and some cherry red shrimp. So here we had the Fluval Flora. This is another one that I recently put together. It's about 4 or 5 months old, and it's got some hair algae issues going on too. I've added this baby bristlenose catfish. This is a calico bristlenose catfish. We'll see what he looks like as he gets older. But he's been keeping the tank pretty clear of diatoms, and I've had a number of babies coming out right now for the I've got some orange neocaridina shrimp in here, and they are finally starting to shoot out some babies, and that's been cool. For the past, I guess, 4 weeks or so, I've been seeing more and more little small babies, and they seem to be doing really good. I'm adding a little additional food to kind of help them out, keeping an eye out for worms and stuff. The tank is not been great, but it's starting to fill in to the neighborhood here. So let's move on to some other stuff. So here's my cat enclosure. Now this is like half a joke because my cat really fell in love with the box and we couldn't part with it. So we just added some toys and kind of ran with it. This is my vision cage. This was part of my vivarium challenge that I did. I guess this is a little over a year old, about a year and a half old. The lizard that I added in here unfortunately passed away. And I'm not sure why. I try to take good care of it, but sometimes these things just happen. So I have not added another lizard or anything. It's just I've just kind of kept the biotope going without my any real creatures in here. Well, that is to say, I do have some little creatures in here. We'll get to them in just a minute. But the plants are growing really well. This sprinkler system that I was kind of worried about because it didn't have the greatest ratings is done really good. It's been really nice and consistent. I'm adding RO water in here, and it's watering the plants great and keeping everything nice and hydrated in here. My isopods and my springtails are all doing really, really good and kind of maintaining a nice little healthy biotope inside of here. I'll probably add a lizard back here eventually, but I'm not really up for it right now. I'm more into just enjoying this as a isopod enclosure and kind of a nice natural little nature TV. All right, and here we have the 210. Now the 210 is a tank that I've threatened to redo many, many times. It's given me a lot of problems. Like the plants haven't grown really well, but I didn't do a lot with the substrate. Like I added some cool substrates and stuff, but mostly it's sand. Sand's inert. It doesn't really hold any nutritional value. I wish I'd known about plenums and kitty litter and clay and adding some other stuff like that that's kind of inexpensive but effective. I especially would like to have added a plenum because I could see at the bottom of this tank and it would be really cool to kind of see what's going on. So what I think I'm going to do is I will redo this tank this year. It might be the only tank I do next year, because I'm not looking to really add more. I just want to kind of enjoy what I've got, hopefully, unless something else gives me trouble. But this tank I put together so I could keep bigger fish. And I've got my Bisher, I've got my blue Ankara, but until the plants kind of get balanced out, I really don't want to add more fish to it. At least of any size. I'd really love to have a bunch of Bishers and watch how they interact in groups and stuff like that. Mr. Tubes is still my most interesting fish, probably one of my favorites, and I just want him to have a really decent home. So another fish that I want to point out is down the lower part of your screen is a yo-yo loach. This yo-yo loach is one of the oldest I've ever seen. He predates my YouTube channel. He's about, I think he's maybe 12 years old, 13 years old, and very good snail destroyer. Lives very well in this tank, and he is definitely another upstart for the ruler of this tank. So you may have noticed this odd decoration in here, and I wanted to explain. So in my sump, I throw all the Anubis scraps and stuff from projects, and anytime I need to trim, but I don't have a place to put it, it goes in my sump. And I thought it'd be really fun to stick them all into this teddy bear cholo wood. So this is a piece of cholo wood with just Anubias all over it. And it's been a kind of an interesting little addition here. I really added it to this tank just to kind of keep it. And this thing on top, it's a piece of glass. And I'm showing you why it's there. It's because this cholo wood is not weighted down and will float away. So the intention is to eventually get rid of this thing. It's just kind of weighting things down. But it's been problem-free so far. And I think eventually I'll pull that cholo wood out of there. But I just wanted a place to keep it where I could keep an eye on it. A lot of the fish in here that are kind of old, especially these rainbows. Those rainbows grew up in my tanks. They're babies from their parents passed away a long time ago. But they're not making any babies right now. I'm pretty sure the blue Ankara and all the other folks in here make sure that those are all gobbled up. So right next door, we have my other terrarium, and this is my BiOrb Air. This has been an absolute delight. I don't do hardly anything to it. I add some RO water to it every so often. I have done a little bit of a trim here and there and pulled the plants out, and it's been problem-free and just really great to have sitting around the house. So right next door, we have my 43-gallon. This, again, was set up with a plenum in the base and a whole lot of different layers of substrate. It gave me a hard time for quite a while. I guess about 6 or 7 months it fought me, but eventually it gave in. This one, again, is run off CO2, and it had a UV filter. That UV filter did not last very long. It lasted about a year or so and had an electrical short or something because the little control panel didn't seem to work anymore. So it's still back there, just kind of in line, but it is not plugged in. So this thing balanced out on its own and eventually became a really, really, really nice tank to have. It desperately needs a trim, though. These plants have gotten kind of way thick, but they're really big lead plants like these Cophophilia Anubias and stuff here in the middle are so huge that I don't have an appropriate tank to stick them in. So I'm kind of, again, hoping to redo that 210, and a big trim from here will help to add to that. Speaking of trim, here's my Megaflex. Now, this is actually my Megaflex from a few weeks ago before I did the last aquarium that I did. If you remember from my last video, I was trimming the plants in here to fill up the tank. And this is kind of a little bit of a look of what it looked like before I trimmed the plants out. I got a little paranoid when I went to do it that I would trim it and they would look terrible. And, of course, it doesn't look as good as it did before, but that's kind of normal. Like you trim a tank and then it has to kind of grow back in. And this one had gotten, I think what was so interesting about it is the Anubias, because I've hidden those roots systems so well, they just seem like just a huge bush, but it's really a bunch of intersected bushes and stuff. And when I took this thing apart and sort of chopped on it a little bit, it really opened it up. So there's a lot more light getting down in there, and you can see the root structure a lot more. I think I'm going to do another trim and pull the whole front of this Anubias bunch off and just kind of let the wood really show coming out the end, because it's got some really amazing pieces of wood that just kind of got engulfed in there. So I want to do another big trim again. Maybe we'll coincide with the 210 going together. Basically, all the plants from the 210 are going to come out of things that I pull from all of these other tanks, I think. And I've enjoyed it. Even after the trim and stuff, it's got just a ton of plants in here, and it's fun to watch the fish interact in here. It's been a real healthy tank. This is a tank that I bought myself. It was quite expensive. It's definitely a treat yourself kind of product if you get one. And I'm not necessarily advocating that you do the same, but I guess this project is one that I'm a little bit more proud of. I definitely spent a lot more time really trying to make it perfect because it did cost me a lot of money. Fluval didn't send me this one or anything. They sent me the extra light, and I really appreciate it. But yeah, I really love this tank. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at it. And that's all we have for this year, folks. This is my last video of 2022. I hope it finds you well. I hope you're doing well in the new year. I hope you've got big plans and a lot of fun projects to do on your own. I'll be back soon with some more videos. I usually take a break around January, but I've taken a lot of breaks this year, so I've just kind of left it sort of undecided. My schedule is very much up in the air. I probably will take some time to kind of catch up on my board game channel. I've got another whole channel that's all about board games. If you're interested in that and somehow did not notice that I am super into those too, feel free to check it out. Until next time, follow your bliss, keep a clean tank, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.